Here is a poem called I Met Athol Guy. He must have been around 48 because I was about 13. He's nearly 80 now, and I'm far closer to the age he was then than I ever thought was going to be possible. He was standing by the buffet table, his band had just played, and they had this great big dirty fuck off feed waiting for them. The Seekers, or the New Seekers. Judith Durham wasn't there anyway, so it wasn't really the Seekers. My dad's best friend was the promoter of the show, and he suggested we go, and that meant driving halfway across the island to see a pretty shitty gig. The promoter's guy's son was into the video game Skate or Die and the band Suicidal Tendencies, and so as we walked backstage with our passes after the gig, he yelled out really loudly in this phony American accent that he peddled for no reason, "Oh my gosh, did that suck?" He had just finished saying that when we got to the door of the green room, and standing right there by the aforementioned food station was Athol Guy. He wanted to meet everyone and anyone that he was sure wanted to meet him. We breezed on past. It was explained we were the promoter's kids and friends, and in fact, I was staff. They'd offered me the job of selling programs, and by offer, I mean they told me I had to do it. And I'd stood by the merch table trying to sell $20 souvenir programs, and I sold a few, and they paid me $20 for my night's work. Athol Guy had this big grin, probably thinking about the money he saved on those slave wages. He stood as upright as his double bass. He was the man, and this was his band, the Seekers, celebrating at that time some 25 years in the game or whatever it was. They were dreadful, and worse than the $20 payoff, we were given a copy of their greatest hits CD. New versions, no Judith Durham, and they all stood around and signed it. Athol Guy went last, and he signed his name larger than anyone else. I remember he had this giant bit of salmon hanging from the corner of his top lip. He shook my hand, told me I was their youngest fan. My friend, the Skate or Die for lifer, said loudly right at him, "No, he's not!" And we laughed after as we discussed how Athol Guy had just figured that meant there was someone younger even than me that was a fan of the band, the imposter version, with Julie Anthony sitting in. Athol Guy kicked everyone out of the backstage area, said they were old and it was time for bed. I remember looking at the 48-year-old guy and figuring him close to 80 then. This was my first backstage experience, and I've hated being backstage ever since. Unless you are in the band or connected to the venue or the immediate touring party, you have no business there. And even then, it's touch and go. Speaking of which, as soon as Athol Guy shook my hand, I knew it was time to leave. Even before he kicked us out so he could finish that salmon, hanging there like a red rubber ball.